Hello everyone, welcome to our channel and thank you for watching. This is about my 100th take at this video. We've got barking dogs and all sorts, deliveries going on and all sorts, so this one hopefully is the one. Welcome to our channel, welcome back to our subscribers and welcome to new subscribers. I'm going to need you to stick with me a little bit today guys, because I'm going to be looking down a lot. I've got a lot of information to give you that I've written down, and I'm also going to need you to stick with me regarding the subject matter, because I have a feeling as soon as I tell you what it is, you're going to click off and not want to watch, and I understand why. The subject of today's video is the Whorlton Hall Scandal. For those of you who don't know, Whorlton Hall was an ATU, an assessment and treatment unit, where somebody who had been sectioned under the Mental Health Act, who had autism or a learning disability, would go for supposed therapy, supposed therapeutic help for a short period of time. Now, for those of you who haven't already clicked off, I know why you don't want to watch it. I understand, it's upsetting, it's horrible. What the people did was absolutely grotesque and awful and disgusting, and it's so upsetting to watch. It's awful to watch. I've watched it actually this morning again, and it's horrible. And when it was first went viral, when the Panarama expose first went live, and it was everywhere, it was all over Facebook. I remember looking at it and thinking, oh my God, please God, not again. After the Winterbourne scandal, I just thought that there may have at least been some change, that there may have been some protection in place, and sadly that wasn't the case. It was the two places were actually at the time owned by the same company. But when I shared the post that was going, the Panarama program that was going around and being shared around on Facebook and stuff, I remember sharing it, and I think I shared it on my big autism page and put something along the lines of, can't believe this has happened again. This is just absolutely terrible. What disgusting people. I just cannot bring myself to watch it, and shared it on my page. And now I realise perhaps that's quite a hypocritical thing to do, because I needed to watch it. It's too close to home, it's disgusting, it's horrible, it's so upsetting, but I did need to watch it, because the only way anything will ever change for these people, these are the most vulnerable people in our society, and the only way this will ever change, and there will be appropriate training, sanctions, somebody actually watching to make sure that this doesn't happen again, is with public pressure. And it's really as simple as that. Sadly, in this country, it appears that the changes promised have not and will not be made until it becomes something that's in the forefront of the public's mind. Which is why, if you feel you can, I would encourage you to watch the documentary, and also to watch the Winterbourne documentary as well, and actually see what was going on and what was happening, how vulnerable those people are and the way that they were treated. Because I'm not sure really that your mind can just conjure up, just understand how awful these people are that do these things. It's kind of like when you see, I don't know, people who've committed awful crimes, like terrible crimes, you can't really understand why they did it. And it's kind of the same thing really. You have to watch it. You have to watch it to understand. Now, I will not be playing any clips of the Panarama program in this video, because the entire point of this video is to raise awareness, to make people understand, that people know exactly what it was, what happened, who did it, why it was allowed to happen. And I will be posting a screenshot of every person featured in that program who did wrong, every single one. and I'll be telling you what it was they did. Because not only is it important to make sure that this never ever happens again, it is important to remind people that if you do things like that, if you treat people that way and you do get caught out and people find out about it, that they do not forget, and that your face won't be forgotten, and that you will be remembered for what you did and what you put people through. And for me, there's just no sympathy for them whatsoever, certainly from me, and I'm sure you'll agree with me when I tell you what they did. And I do, you know what, I hope the video does circulate, and I hope that people do, new people who didn't realise it was them, get a glimpse of this video, that somebody does recognise them from this video and just say to them, I can't believe what you did. Nobody should be able to do that and then just go off and live the rest of their lives with nobody knowing how awful they are, what a horrible, terrible, terrible person they are. Okay, so the first thing that we need to know is that there are over 1 million people in the UK with autism or a learning disability. Of those, 2,245 are currently in hospital. Now, that usually means an ATU, which is an assessment and treatment unit, which, as I said earlier on, is supposed to be a short-term measure for those whose current care is not suiting them for one reason or another, where they are at risk of harming themselves or someone else and things have really gotten out of hand. Those people will usually be held in an ATU under the Mental Health Act. The idea behind that is that they can receive short-term therapeutic measures and then go back to their community, their care outside of an ATU, back out into the world basically. Now, the Mental Health Act says when you can be detained in hospital and treated against your wishes. You can be detained if professionals think your mental health puts you or others at risk and you need to be in hospital. If you are detained, NHS staff may be able to give you treatment even if you don't want it. There are different sections to the Mental Health Act. They're used for different reasons. When you are detained, you have the right to appeal and the right to get help from an independent advocate. Now, I believe that usually a person held under the Mental Health Act will be held under Section 2 or Section 3. So where autism or a learning disability is concerned, a person will usually be held under either Section 2 or Section 3 of the Mental Health Act. Under Section 2, a person can be held for up to 28 days. Under Section 3, a person can be held for up to 6 months. Usually it's a lot longer than that. There are people who have been in there for years. There are people who've been in there for a number of months. Even if you are the parent of a minor, a person under the age of 18, if they are detained under the Mental Health Act, it is very, very difficult to get them back out. Now, of those 2,245 individuals who are in hospital, 58% of those have been there for over 2 years. That's a big number. That's a really, really big number for something that's supposed to be a short-term fix. That's a huge number. It is known that an ATU often will worsen the person's condition, worsen the person's behaviours. If a person is not treated in the correct manner, of course, their symptoms worsen. People are known to be diagnosed with PTSD after having been mistreated in the way that was shown in this documentary, which quite obviously will worsen any pre-existing condition that they have. Also, of those 2,245 people who are held, there are concerns in a recent report for the care of 1 in 10. That's a big number. That's an absolutely huge number. Often the blame sort of like laid at the feet of like there being like a lack of proper training, a lot of vacancies, under-trained staff, poorly trained staff. What I just saw, that wasn't poor training. It wasn't understaffing, it was absolute total and utter cruelty and a total and utter house of hell. And I think what shocked me the most about it, what I don't really understand and what I very often find with people who've committed crimes, which is what they did, what they did was criminal, there's no two ways about it. They totally mistreated and abused these people. What I never really understand is that one person, I couldn't understand how one person can infiltrate a group of good people and can be slyly doing things that are awful. What I don't understand is how you get so many together. I can't imagine being in anybody's company who did something like that and not telling them exactly what I thought. And even if I felt threatened by them, I'd most certainly always report it. I just find it very, very odd. And so sad and upsetting, and just like you lose your faith in humanity a little bit, to be honest. And it makes you a bit less proud to be British, because it looks like something from the third world. It's just, you just can't believe it's Britain 2019 and that's happening. That's how the most vulnerable people in our society are being treated. Of course, it's not the case in every ATU. Of course, it's not the case in every place that offers care to the vulnerable. But in this instance, it was going on and on and on to a point with so many people involved that it just absolutely begs belief. It's just like, it just destroys your faith in human nature, to be honest with you, and it makes you just fear for your children any time that you're not watching them, just autistic or otherwise, because there's just so many terrible people out there, isn't there? So moving on, the Whorlton Hall Scandal actually broke 8 years after the Winterbourne Scandal. Now, after the Winterbourne Scandal, the government promised to close these hospitals, these ATUs, move patients into suitable care within the community or whatever was suitable for them. They promised to institute a closure program, and none of that happened. They actually said at the time, 8 years ago, when the Winterbourne Scandal broke, again, it was a Panarama documentary and it was horrendous. Our government said, this can never happen again. We're 8 years down the line. This has happened again. Strangely enough, Winterbourne, View and Whorlton Hall were actually owned by the same company, which was called Castleback. It was then, after the scandal, Winterbourne View was closed entirely and Whorlton Hall was purchased by a company called Danshaw and then a company called Signet. Now, at the time of the Winterbourne Scandal, there were 3,400 patients held in ATUs. There are now in excess of 2,000 patients, so while the number has gone down, it's certainly not over. It's certainly not stopped. There are just as many people going into these facilities and being treated in a way that is less than ideal for their long-term care. At that time, Stephen Bubb, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, was approached by the UK government and asked to make his recommendations on what should be done. He recommended an institute closure programme, introducing a charter of rights to empower families and independence, and for a totally separate commissioner who just dealt with abuse and scandal of those with disabilities. None of that was done. None of it. Absolutely none of it at all. So, now here we are. So, Olivia Davis was the undercover reporter who was sent in by Panarama to go and work at Whorlton Hall. As I say, after the government had already promised that it would never happen again, there have been reports, there have been whistleblowers, pretty much very similar situation really, where there were strong suspicions that things untoward were going on, and she was sent in with a hidden camera to go and investigate, and she actually worked there for 2 months, and she saw some terrible things while she was there and uncovered the whole thing. In this particular institution, shall we say, there were 27 staff every day, which greatly outnumbered the patients. There were also 2 nurses and 2 managers at any one time. Now, I would just like to show you a photograph of the room where they had their meetings, and the writing on the wall, the inspirational words written behind the person hosting the meeting. So I'll now go on to tell you the different members of staff that are featured in the video and the things that they did to the patients. Some of this is upsetting. I'm not showing any footage. I am showing the face of each person because, as I said before, I think it's really important. I think it's really, really important. It's important that people know who these people are. It's important that it does follow them. What they did was so disgusting and so appalling, but there are others out there doing it. So if this reaches just one of those people and they look at that and think, and they see what people say about these people and about what they did and about the kind of person they are and how ugly these persons' hearts are inside, and just what utterly revolting, disgusting human beings they are, they might think twice about the next time they decide to become abusive towards somebody who is vulnerable and who is unable to defend themselves. So we'll start off with Saba. Saba was abusive and taunting patients during restraint. She insults the patient's family. She calls patients names. She tries to provoke patients during the programme. She stands and watches, thoroughly enjoying seeing extremely inappropriate restraints, very violent restraints, too many people restraints, laughing with the other staff members while a person's being restrained on the floor. In the programme, it's anything up to 30 minutes that people are being held for. She seems to think that's absolutely hilarious. So let's show her face first. So hopefully they'll all get to have a little look at this and be reminded of their little 5 minutes of fame. Neil, you in particular, I'm sorry, Niall, I do apologise. This person refused to use the word man to describe him. Was quite the star of the show. Your mum must be really proud. He was mocking, swearing, calling patients fat, both in front of them and behind their backs. He was very much intimidating patients. He was intentionally targeting a patient who was not only afraid of men, but actually had an EHCP stating that she should only be cared for by women. He was making inappropriate sexual comments. I'd like to say innuendos, but that would be quite far from the truth actually. It was quite graphic. Sexual talk in front of the patients. He was continually provoking patients, targeting certain patients, using unnecessary, illegal, violent restraint. He at one point actually stood and offered a patient a fight and told him he'd knock him through the floor. He offered out chewing gum while he had a patient's head between his knees. During a restraint, there was about 6 or 7 members of staff there at that point. They're all featured here, so don't worry, they'll all get their 5 minutes of fame on this video. He is shown handing out chewing gum and wearing the patient's glasses. He's also shown showing others how to slyly hurt a patient without anyone knowing, because he's extremely concerned towards the end of the programme where the Care Quality Commission have become involved and decided to use CCTV. So there you go, he's an oil. So moving on to Matthew. Matthew is taunting a patient continually who is afraid of men, the same patient who is afraid of men and who has an EHCP plan stating that she should only be cared for by women. He's constantly hanging around her, tormenting her, trying to trigger her and set her off. He also discovered that she was massively afraid of balloons to the point of it being a phobia and continually threatens her with them. He actually carries them with him and he goes in and like stretches and snaps them in front of her, threatening to blow them up and stuff like that. She's very, very frightened by that. It's pretty much torture. Absolutely disgusting. He's another one who says really explicit, revolting things in front of the patients. He's very threatening. He threatens to deck a patient. He's basically just on a par with all of the others. Absolutely disgusting person. So there we go. Here's Matthew. Next on the list is Ryan. Ryan again makes inappropriately sexual comments, poses a patient's possessions into sexual poses and has joking conversations with the other carers he's with about that. Well, basically while they laugh on as though it's funny. Really not. He very cruelly provokes a particular patient by removing things from his room, his possessions. He's also involved in very inappropriate and illegal actually restraint and the covering up of such restraint, which I must add actually everyone is. They all seem to not know the correct procedure and the legalities of it all. So next on my list is Wacker. He's certainly portrayed as one of the worst ones in the documentary, in my opinion. He makes sexual reference with patients' toys. He hits patients. He brags about banging patients' heads off the floor. He is very unkind about patients behind their back, says very disgusting things about them, and he also is known to provoke certain patients, pick on certain patients. So here's a photo of him. Moving on to John. John is known to, threaten patients, put on an act when visitors are there, and then go downstairs and say disgusting things about the patients, be very, very rude about them, taunting patients, offering patients a fight, basically just being an absolute out and out bully, to be honest. And what I thought as I was watching him on the screen, him in particular, was, my God, is that what it takes to make you feel like a man? To be honest. He was just trying to fight this young man with learning difficulties who didn't really understand the situation, what was going on, and he was just being absolutely a terrible, horrible person. You could just see he was really getting off on it. It was really trying to, you could see it was making him feel like really big and strong and hard. I just thought, my God, absolutely awful. Anyway, here he comes. Next is Nurse Karen. Do you know, I'm always more shocked when it's with me. I don't know why. I was just this lady I was particularly shocked by. When I first saw her come onto the programme, I didn't think she'd be involved in any of it, but in actual fact she's seen cruelly laughing at restraint, mocking patients, shouting at patients, shouting at a young man who'd been restrained and had all of his things removed, that he wasn't getting his stuff back afterwards, standing watching, enjoying the show while patients are being restrained a few times in the programme. So here she is. Next on my list is James. He is seen taunting patients, showing the Olivia, who is the fake carer, the actual reporter who's in there, how to slyly hurt a patient without anybody knowing that you've done it, laughing along and taunting the young man who was being provoked and offered a fight in his room, and basically just joining in with everybody else, allowing everything to go on, really enjoying everybody's cruel actions towards all of these vulnerable people. Next up is Sarah. She is seen watching and laughing at an inappropriate and illegal restraint where a patient's very distressed. She's seen intentionally provoking a patient and thoroughly enjoying watching him suffer as his things are removed from his room, which is a totally unnecessary step that she just happens to be taking because so she can just be nasty. She uses foul language, provoking and mocking patients. She is seen laughing at meltdown. She's seen intentionally causing a meltdown and using a very rough, very illegal form of restraint. Here she is. Next we have Deputy Manager Steve, seen telling people to lie about the type of restraint used so as they don't get into trouble, basically. Here he is. Now this guy, don't know his name, don't particularly want to know it, is seen describing how he closed the line to patients. If you don't know what that is, it's where you stick your arm out and run into them and knock them absolutely flying. It's very dangerous. I'm sure it was very confusing for the person it was inflicted upon, and it's an absolutely disgusting way to behave. So here's your 5 minutes of fame. So there we have it, guys. That's a very watered down version of the Whorlton Hall scandal, and I hope by putting it forward in this way, where you don't actually have to see those awful, terrible things that those people did, more people will get to hear about it, more people will get to know about it, because the public is a very powerful thing. The British public is a very, very powerful force, and I think this particular problem and the recurrence of this problem and the lack of action from our government on it, in my opinion, relates directly to the fact that it blows up and goes viral and everybody's absolutely outraged. And a lot of people like me, exactly like I was, I'm not judging anyone, believe me, looks and thinks, I can't watch that, I don't want to see that. It's like a fear, isn't it? It's a fear of what you'll see, it's a fear of what it will make you feel, particularly if you have a vulnerable person of any description at all within your family, in your life, who you do care about. You do see them, don't you? When you watch things like that, it makes you think of your own kids, doesn't it? And the only thing I will say is that on that subject is that we fear watching that, we fear seeing that on a screen, and you know how it makes us feel. And what said you know again? I nearly got through this one, didn't I? Never mind. What it makes us feel and what it makes the emotions that it drags up, and it can stay with you for days, it can give you nightmares. I know, I understand, especially if your children are vulnerable. It's like watching your worst fear come true for somebody else. It's absolutely awful. But for those people who were sectioned and held in that ATU at that time in Whorlton Hall, that was their life. The people who were supposed to look after them, keep them safe, care for them, help them get better, help them feel better, help them get back to life in the outside world, who were paid by our NHS to go there and do that. Those are the people who inflicted that on them, who made their lives live in hell day after day after day, who made their conditions worse, who left them traumatised. So I think that we do all have to know about it. And I hope that by putting it forward in this way, more people will know about it, because it is a way to really understand and get out there what happened without having to watch that awful footage to actually see what happened. I think most of us will be outraged enough just with a bit more detailed knowledge of what happened. The trouble when things like that hit the news is that people like me, like many other people I know, who think, oh, I can't watch that, I just can't watch it. It upsets me too much, it makes me too angry, all the rest of it. It tends to lose its momentum very quickly, and it falls out of the spotlight. And it's not because no one cares. It's almost like the opposite. It's because people just can't witness cruelty like that. But that's not, Whorlton Hall's not going to be the only place that that's happening. It's probably happening somewhere in this country as we speak. So they're not being checked properly. They're not being checked up on properly. There's no CCTV. There's no real protection in place. And as you can see from what I've already told you in today's video, it's very possible for multiple people inclined in that way to come together and create just that absolute living hell. I think it's also important to remember that we're all going to get old one day, and we're all going to rely on someone or another to care for us if we're lucky enough to reach our old age. We're going to need to rely on people to look after us, because we're going to become vulnerable, and we're going to become frail, and we're going to become unable to defend ourselves. And I certainly hope by that point, by the time I get there, by the time my children get there, that there are things in place that really do mean that this will never ever happen again. The only thing that will push this forward and help not only those within the autism community who are held under the Mental Health Act, but any vulnerable person in any kind of setting, whether it's a school, an old person's home, an ATU, whatever it is, people who are vulnerable, people who can't tell others what's happening, people who can't defend themselves, need some protection. And the only way that they are going to get that is if public opinion changes. The only way they are going to get that is if enough people feel strongly about it that it will win someone some votes, or if enough people feel strongly about it that it shames somebody somewhere along that chain of command into making the necessary changes to make it happen. It costs money, but it can happen. So maybe knock a bit off the entertainment budget and throw a few CCTV cameras their way, maybe, I don't know. I just feel like at the moment it's very much a case of like you have to trust people, you have to have faith that that kind of thing's rare. You have to believe that people won't do that kind of thing. I don't think you have to believe anything. I think when you've got somebody in your care who's vulnerable, you should be able to check on them at any point, at any time. If you've got particularly a minor, but any person really, because if somebody makes it to an ATU, they're already an extremely vulnerable person. You should be able to check in on them 24 hours a day. There should be CCTV that you can log into and check on them 24 hours a day, in my opinion. Because I think the way to weed out these absolute cowards who make a beeline for these kind of places because they need something to make them feel big, to feel strong. And if they weren't there, if they weren't in the ATU, they'd be in our hospitals, they'd be in our old people's homes, they'd be in our schools. They're that kind of person, they're predators. They're looking for somebody to push down and bully and make themselves feel big and strong. If there was CCTV in place where you could check in at any point, day or night, on them, just the idea that you might be watching would be enough. Would be enough to stop them, in my opinion. And I feel like that fear of watching that programme, that like fear of what it'll make you feel, of what you'll see on the screen and stuff, that's almost like fear of them. That's almost letting them win. And I won't let them win. I'm not afraid of them. I won't let them win. As a country, I believe that the British public will stand up to people like that. I believe I will stand up to people like that. I will stand up and be counted and say, oh, I'm not all right with this. This is not okay. This needs to stop. It begs belief that in 2019 in Great Britain this is even happening. And I believe that the vast majority of the British public would be prepared to say that, because as I said earlier on, you don't necessarily even have to have somebody who's vulnerable in your life. People can see that's wrong. People can see that's abuse. It's like saying that people aren't interested. It's like saying that if there's a child abuser living on your street, you'd be all right with it as long as you haven't got kids. It's like saying if somebody you knew went and committed a rape, it's absolutely fine as long as they stay away from all of the women you know. It's ridiculous. What they did is absolutely abhorrent. It's disgusting. It's appalling. And I'm kind of dreading for the filming for the Winterbourne one, but I will do it. And I will push it forward, and I will try my absolute utmost to have as many people as possible hear this story, understand it, know what happened, know who did it, and at least have that in their mind, at least have that idea in their mind that this is still going on in this country. As we speak, this kind of thing's happening somewhere. And as I said earlier on, if we're fortunate enough, we all get old one day. We all have children. Children are vulnerable. Whether they're NT, if they're special needs, they're extra vulnerable. We all have elderly relatives, they're vulnerable. We're all only one, God forbid, one terrible accident, illness, whatever, from becoming disabled ourselves and depending on other people for care. And you just need to just stop for a minute, really think about that, let that sink in for a minute. Those people who at that time were being held at Whorlton Hall were dependent on those people for their care, for everything. And basically, in a nutshell, the rapists and the paedophiles and the murderers in prison were being treated better than them. Let that sink in for a minute as well. So, the purpose of this video is to ask you all, really sincerely ask you all, share this story in some way. I'll link the Panarama programme underneath. You can share that. Write a status. Share this video. Please keep it in the limelight. Keep it in the public light. And just spread the word far and wide. Because if we don't get up and fight this, it will go on and on and on. And it's a matter of time before we're watching another Panarama programme with another scandal on it. And another set of vulnerable people, I shouldn't say children, vulnerable people who've been hurt and who've been harmed, and the damage is done and it's absolutely irreparable. So, on that slightly sad note, please give the video a share. If not give the video a share, as I say, write a status, share the Panarama video, share any post you want to, but just get the word out there, remind people that that happened and it's still not been put right. Please do hit the subscribe button down below to see our future videos, and please do give the video a thumbs up down below. And of course, as always, I'm very happy to hear your opinions, but do keep it respectful. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Speak to you soon. Bye.